February 1945, a city once called the Pearl of the Orient becomes a furnace of fire. For 29 days, one of the most beautiful cities in Asia is turned into rubble, homes collapse, churches burn, hospitals become execution grounds. But this wasn't just another World War II battle, this was a battle where more civilians died than soldiers. More than 100,000 innocent men, women, and children perished, not in crossfire, not by accident, but in massacres, executions, starvation, and relentless bombardment. This is the story of the Battle of Manila, a battle so brutal, it rivaled the destruction of Warsaw and Stalingrad. And if you think you know World War II, this chapter may change everything. When American forces under General Douglas MacArthur returned to the Philippines, they came with a promise, "I shall return," and in January 1945, that promise became reality. The U.S. 6th Army advanced toward Manila to liberate it from Japanese occupation. Filipinos waited anxiously. Some believed freedom was only days away, but inside the city, something far darker was unfolding. Japanese forces, led by Rear Admiral Sanji Iwabuchi, made a catastrophic decision. Instead of retreating, they would fight to the death, and Manila would pay the price. Manila was not prepared for siege warfare. It was a living city, filled with families, hospitals, universities, and centuries-old churches. The historic district of Intramuros stood as the cultural heart of the capital. But when fighting began on February 3, 1945, Manila became a cage. Japanese troops fortified buildings, mined streets, and barricaded neighborhoods. Civilians were trapped. They had nowhere to run. American artillery began pounding the city to dislodge entrenched defenders. Every shell that hit a military position also destroyed homes. Entire blocks collapsed, and soon, the battle changed from military confrontation to civilian catastrophe. What followed was not just battle, it was systematic slaughter. Japanese troops began rounding up civilians, accusing them of aiding Americans. Families were locked inside buildings and burned alive. Hospitals were stormed, doctors and nurses were bayoneted. In places like De La Salle College and along the streets of Intramuros, civilians were executed in groups. Women were assaulted, children were shot. In one instance, hundreds were crammed into a single building before it was set on fire. These were not accidents of war, they were deliberate massacres. Historians would later call it the Manila Massacre. By the time the battle ended, an estimated 100,000 civilians were dead, more civilians than Japanese defenders killed, more civilians than American soldiers lost. American forces faced a brutal dilemma. Japanese troops refused to surrender. They used civilians as shields. Snipers fired from hospitals and churches. To end the battle, American commanders authorized heavy artillery bombardment. The shelling of Intramuros was relentless. Historic landmarks dating back 300 years were reduced to dust. Manila became one of the most destroyed Allied cities of World War II. By the end of February 1945, the city resembled a moonscape. Bodies lay in the streets, entire neighborhoods vanished. The cost of liberation had become unimaginable. Unlike battles fought in open fields, this was urban warfare in a densely populated city. Civilians were trapped between two forces, a desperate Japanese defense, and an advancing American army determined to end occupation. Rear Admiral Iwabuchi defied orders to withdraw. Instead, he chose annihilation. The result? The deadliest urban battle in Philippine history. More civilians died here than in many European battles combined. The tragedy was amplified by refusal to evacuate civilians, intentional massacres, heavy artillery in populated areas, block-by-block urban fighting. It was the perfect storm of war brutality. When the guns finally fell silent on March 3, 1945, Manila was gone. Only Warsaw and Stalingrad rivaled its destruction. Survivors wandered through ruins searching for loved ones. Mass graves were dug. Entire families had vanished. The city that once glittered with life became a graveyard. The scars of the Battle of Manila remain today. Monuments now stand where neighborhoods once stood. And yet, outside the Philippines, this battle is rarely discussed, despite killing more civilians than soldiers, despite being one of the worst urban massacres of World War II. History often remembers generals, strategies, victory, But sometimes, the true story lies in the civilians who never chose to fight. The Battle of Manila reminds us that in war, the battlefield is not just a military map, it's a city, it's a family, it's a childhood that never had a chance to grow. If you want more untold, dark chapters of history that textbooks barely mention, subscribe to this channel. Because some stories were buried beneath rubble, and together, we uncover them.